guess.
Yeah.
Rude. Okay.
Okay. And then how do we see when people are here?
Um,
Do you want to go to
we're
YouTube
live.
and make sure that it's
Hold on.
where it's
It's
at on YouTube?
working. So I don't know. Usually like comments come through on the comments will come through on StreamYard and I'll like put them up on the thing on the like I can click to put
Oh
them
yeah,
up on
that's
the
private
screen.
chat. I can go into comments and see. Okay. Oh, but I have
Comments
to
is
join the chat.
no,
Connect
the
my
private
YouTube account.
chat's just between you and me. The
No, I know.
comments
I'm
are
going into the comment.
yeah. And that's like, let me see if I can hop into oh good. So it turned this okay. I can't believe this worked.
I know. I'm having trouble joining the chat, so I might just have you. Oh no, there we go. Cool.
Oh, Luke. Yes. What's up, Luke?
Well, I can't join the chat, so I'm just gonna have to live react because it won't let
You
me do
can't
it.
see the comments?
I can see the comments now, but I won't be able to like comment back in the chat because it won't let me connect my Google account. It keeps getting an error, but it said it's their fault, not my fault.
Oh.
So I'm gonna blame them. This is a failure on StreamYard's part.
This was my joke to everybody. I was like, well, I think you and I said this to each other too. It was like, if we fail at the live stream, it's like
Yeah.
an epic pun, so it's fine.
It was like meta commentary on
Yeah.
failure. Luke, you get an extra gold star for being early.
Yeah, thank you.
Early
We joined
bird.
early because I was afraid it wasn't gonna work. I was like, listen, my setup right now is janky as hell because my like cheap ring light broke. And then I asked one of my marketing groups what they recommended. And Jay sent me his setup.
Which is
And
probably overkill.
no, it's like
No?
super actually his was more approachable than what I ended up getting. Cause then at the same time I'd asked Travis and Tyler at Video Pilgrim, because
Yeah.
I've worked with them and they're my buddies. And Travis was like, get this. And I was unpacking them this morning to set up my lighting. First of all, the stand isn't here, so it's balanced on, like, a tiny shelf
Oh, perfect. So it could
under
fall at
some
any moment.
books. Yeah, to, like, kind of give me the right light, and yeah, that's, yeah, that's true. So
Yeah.
anyway, this is the most like, the actual, like, softener thing,
Oh,
I can't figure out how to
wow.
attach it to the light, and they have
Wow.
this stuff is so advanced that it didn't come with instructions. They just
Oh,
assume
they're
you
like,
know how
"You
to
should
use it.
know. You're a professional."
Yeah.
Also, the funniest thing was when we first went remote at OpenView, they went, like, overkill on delivering us, like, everything that we would possibly need for remote meetings, and they sent us this, like, green screen that was supposed to sit on the back of your chair, and it was, like, one of those that, like, flips like, folds up into a circle and then, like, you know what I
Oh.
mean? Like, the tension it's like a kind of a tension loop. But the thing, whenever it was open, it was absolutely impossible to, like, get it back in. It was the most maddening thing I've ever been gifted in my entire life because the first time you opened it, it's like you're never getting it back up. So I just had, like, a big green screen circle, and it, like, never fit perfectly in the so it was always like this, and you could always see, like, around the green screen. It was so bad.
I love that.
It was
That's
so
the most
bad.
Zoom thing ever, and I love
I
it.
know,
Like,
early
that's
COVID gift where that we did have, like, a little clip-on ring light that was really useful that I actually
Mhm.
don't know where it is, but you would have to charge it because it, like, could clip onto your laptop, and it was a really, like, handy thing, but I would never have mine charged because the same way that my AirPods are never charged, and so I
Yeah.
just never I think if I have to charge something, it's just I'm not using it.
Note to everyone, don't give Margaret something with batteries.
Like, give me like, like, the good thing about, headphones, like, corded headphones
Mhm.
is that you never have to worry about that kinda stuff, and now all of a sudden I
Yeah.
have another to do on my to-do list, like, God,
Oh, Margaret, life is so hard.
life is so hard.
Tell me this, did the fact that we were, recording a podcast about failure make you think about failure in, like, all the, like
A deep introspective way.
yeah, or, like,
Yeah.
just going about your day-to-day life, I'm like, like a little mess up, I'm like, "Well, I guess I failed at that, haha," and I'm like, "That's not failure." Like, I just
No,
like
what happened to me is I started getting like very like, oh my God, all of the times I've failed in my life. And like not a good way. And like let me just go back into and relive all of the failure and painful moments in my life. But it's been great. No, it's been a great week getting ready for this.
yeah, I even, like, I looked up the dictionary definition of failure too, because I was, like, getting really meta with it, which we'll talk about in the show,
Well,
but
it's noon. Do you want to just
yeah, I
consider
think
this
we
the
should
start of the
just
show?
get into it. Although I do
That was my, clapper.
okay, but, like, one quick question I wanted to ask you first, because like,
Okay.
I know what you've been up to, but I feel like other people don't, so, like, is there anything from break that, like, stood out to you or that you missed, as in me specifically? I know
You want me to tell the audience how much I missed you over break?
yes, and then anything else you might wanna share, but, I mean, that was really the priority, so
I missed you deeply. I missed recording. I think honestly, like when I was thinking about it, it really does feel like it's such a nice weekly touch point that we have when we're in the cadence of recording that it feels like an outlet. It feels like one of those calls that I'm always like mentally stimulated after we record an episode. I feel like I've been able to clarify something in my own brain that maybe has been messy or that I haven't thought about. And even when we recorded the episode that will be, I think, our third episode on Audacity, and we recorded it last week.
yeah.
That was one of those ones where it was like, I think about it all the time, but I didn't sit down and ever like really get into it, right? Like
Yeah.
I've been thinking about it as something that I've wanted to add into my life, but I like it helps clarify my own understanding, and I miss that piece. So when
Yeah,
we take breaks, it's sad for my brain.
it is sad. My brain got lazy for
Yeah.
well,
Well,
I was
yeah,
also going through chemo, so, like, probably that had something to do with it,
yeah.
but,
Be
also
nice
I
to your
didn't have
brain. You've
actually,
been
one thing
going
I'm
through some
really
shit.
it's okay, tomorrow is the start of my last cycle.
That's amazing.
That's the highlight for me is getting out of
Yeah.
here. Oh, hi, Eric. I was just talking to him on Slack and sharing with him about how this might fail altogether, and hopefully it's a pun.
It didn't
Um,
fail. We have people that are here and talking to us, and it must mean that we're live on YouTube. So good job, Devin, for setting this up. No failure.
Yay!
Well, minor failure yesterday, but we've solved all the failures, and today it's not a failure
Y'all, my first version of this event, which I linked to in
everywhere.
the calendar event, didn't allow me to invite Margaret. Like, it just, like, didn't I did it wrong. I did it wrong. And I was like, "How do you" um, but to your point about break, one of the things I'm excited about for this season and, like, a little teaser for everyone is having the new newsletter segment, as we're
Yeah.
calling it, where we're getting to process the reflections of other people too, all in that same week. So, like, I've reached out to some folks asking them to react to upcoming podcasts, and we'll
Yeah.
include that reaction in the newsletter. And I only invited people who don't have the same opinion and are very opinionated. So
We want
I
some
wanted
controversy, not
yeah,
like you and I aren't enough. We're like, let's build some more in here.
exactly. And already I've been sort of coordinating with some folks, and so one of them sent me, because we pre-recorded Audacity,
Yeah.
sent me something already, and it's already, like,
So good.
making me think differently about what we talked about. Oh, hi, Meg. Hi, Doug. Oh my goodness. Hi. Eric, tell Alex I say hi. And why hasn't he invited me to be on his podcast? No. Alex used to be at Lattice and he started his company called Doc, and him and Eric are crushing it over there. And we were just talking about that. Okay. So would you now let's get into the show, I guess.
Yeah, I
Let's
think
get into
we're
it.
officially in the show talking
Yes.
about failure today.
Failure today. Not tomorrow, only failure today.
Well, failure is always in the moment, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we wanted to talk about this topic for a bunch of reasons. I think my kinship with it is that I don't think failure really exists. And it like, to me, it's not an endpoint.
Mm.
It's not a cul-de-sac. It's like, could be a fork or many forks in the road. And it doesn't, oh, Romley. Hi, Lindsay. Sorry. This is gonna be hard not to do because these are,
I
like,
know.
all our friends. who we didn't
We're
make
gonna have to
come, they
edit this
came
out
by
of the actual
themselves.
podcast episode, all of us, like, "Hi,
I
hi,
know.
it's so good to see you."
You should listen to Romney's podcast too, it's really good.
Oh,
We've
yeah.
both been on it. But anyway, so yeah, like to me, like I've experienced failure in a lot of different ways in my life, both as I was coming up in my career and then what you might say was like the sort of pinnacle moment as CEO and like the differences in failure as a leader versus failure on your way up. And I've had a sort of consistent experience where the places where I experienced failure weren't in the thing I thought I could fail at. It was elsewhere.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wait, that's okay.
Do you
Let's
want
just
me to
dive
go
in and
into it?
unpack that bit. Yeah, I wanna unpack that bit. So, when you're looking at an opportunity or a circumstance in front of you, and you think about like, we all do this, we ruminate on, like, all the different things that could go wrong. It's the one that you don't ever see coming?
Yes.
Ooh.
So, and this is like, I'm an ambitious person. I'm competitive. My career was front and center for my life for most of my life. And when I was in Boston, still on my way up, trying to make a name for myself, I participated. I became like a TEDx organizer for someone else who was leading one. He's my friend C Todd. And we had a great time doing it, and the next year we were gonna start it again, and he had to back out, and I'd already kind of, like, lined up a bunch of speakers,
Mm,
and I was determined. I was like, "I can't." Actually, Jay Kunzo was one of them, and I was like, "I can't go to these people and say that I failed, like, this thing isn't gonna work out, because 'cause they'll see me as a failure, and it'll compromise my reputation, like, I have to make this happen."
yeah.
And so I took that on, and what ended up happening was I compromised my physical and mental health.
Mm,
I let down others. Like, I remember, this one day, it was in the summer, it was, like, gonna happen in September, and it was in the summertime, and I was invited to apply for a job at Bessemer, and I had to go to the doctor because I wasn't feeling well, and, like, I got long story short, I got this, like, wild fever by the end of the day when I had to go to this interview, tanked the interview. Like, I don't even remember it. I was, like, basically
sweaty,
delirious. Yeah,
delirious.
yeah.
Everyone's
Because I
like,
knew I was like,
"Ooh,
if I tell them I can't come because 'cause I'm sick, no one's ever gonna like, they're not gonna believe me,
yeah,
right?
I gotta show up and show them 'em I'm sick."
Yeah. Well, hopefully I hit it. So then I'm sick for days. I completely miss an event I was supposed to do for Katie Martell, my friend,
Mhm,
and she ended up calling me, like, worried on, like, not only where I was, but was I okay? And, I encountered all these points that could have been failure, right? Like, I didn't technically have a like, the right license to put on the event, so I found ways around it, and then someone caught wind of it and, like, kinda tried to.
shut you down.
Yeah, and so, like, if you think about it, I could look back on that and be like, "Look at how I problem solved everything. Look at how I, like, made it happen no matter what."
Yeah,
I ended up with complete and total burnout that lasted at least a year, $24,000 in debt personally, because I couldn't get the
'cause you
resources
couldn't
I
say
needed.
no.
And yeah, and I'm like, so I put on this TEDx event,
Yeah.
and when I look back on it now, I'm like, I had the opportunity to just be like, "Nope. Sorry, guys,
And
it's not
at
happening
so many
anymore."
different points, right? Like, there was probably thousands of points that you could have quit.
Yep.
Yeah,
And instead of failing, like, failing at that thing was non-negotiable for me.
yeah.
But then when I
So
finally
you
achieved
failed
it,
hard in every other way.
yeah, my life was in ruins. Like, I had to take, like, I was not in a good place by the time that was done. That was also due to the 1,000 other things I was doing to build my career at the same time, including going to India for 6 weeks that summer to volunteer. Like, it was so stupid, but, like,
God, if you could bottle that energy again.
yeah, but it's like looking back, I was like, I remember how much of a panic I was in.
Yeah.
I have to make this happen or I'm gonna be a failure. Like, I literally believed that. And now I look back and I'm like, "God, I failed at life. I should have just been like, 'No, peeps. This isn't even my brand. Who the fuck cares anyway?'"
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, I think okay, so that's an interesting piece is like what do we hold on versus what do we let go of as being a absolute decision maker for failure, right? Because it sounds like you held on way too long. You did not quit when you could have, should have, and you had this like very static mental model of what success looked like that you couldn't see past.
yeah. Like, failure can be a decision, and I think it is a decision in more cases than not. It's just that what we decide, like, it doesn't feel that way, right? It's like
Yeah.
we may decide, "I'm gonna make this job work, even though it sucks."
Yep.
And then we get fired and we're like, "Ugh," you know what I mean? It feels like failure. I'm like, I've been fired from 2 jobs, and in both cases
Only 2? I thought it was more than that.
no, Alignable and Help Scout
Okay.
that I know of.
Quiet firing when they make it so miserable that you leave and you think it was your idea.
I have a red stapler, okay? No. Um, but, like, looking back on both of those situations, like, both of them had deteriorated to a point where I should have quit because I was unhappy.
Yeah.
Now, the ability to do so without another income, like, there's lots of other facets about that, but if I were to take the mindset at that time of, "Hey, I wanna quit my job, this isn't a fit for me anymore,
Yeah.
and maybe I can't at this moment, but I'm just gonna do my best and focus really hard on finding myself a better situation." Um, because saying no and stopping are so much of success,
Yeah.
almost more so than saying yes.
Oh, yeah, I think that there's so many more no's than there are yeses if you're gonna do it right, right? I mean, there's so many times where you have to and I think that's the hard thing is when yeah, when you have an income or when you have a good opportunity in front of you or whatever it is, say no to that feels going back to the episode that will be launched after this, but we've already recorded, to have the audacity to say no to those things is really interesting, and I think, like, my experience has been a little bit on the flip side where I feel like I'm really good, especially at leaving jobs.
At just
My
the right
lever is
time.
good. My lever is good, and I think what that is, but I've never done it rashly. I've never done it I mean, I think this last time leaving OpenView, was the first time that I obviously left before I had, like, another job because I was committed to going and building, my business, but that was the first time that I kind of leapt into the unknown like that. All the other times I've left, but I've always had something on the horizon.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
a job offer in hand, actually, not even on the horizon, like, absolutely, like, signed offer.
I'm the exact
I
opposite. I
know,
was
you're
like
just flying through life,
just left. I was like,
firing, quitting, whatever.
yeah. But even animals, I mean, you were there for a lot of that journey with me
Yeah.
where, you know, even leaving felt like a failure. Because I think
Yeah.
with leaders too, the experience is so different, right? It's like you're almost doing better the more you say no to and in a
Yeah.
way. And because focus is so important. And then yeah, just like taking, admitting defeat, not in a traditional way. Like I didn't tank the company.
Yeah.
It's just like admitting defeat in that,
I'm not the right person for this anymore.
nope.
Yeah.
And it was from in part for me, but
Yeah.
I think it's hard to. And then thinking back to, like, when I was, like, marketing, when you're sort of in that, director and above role where, like, you're responsible for that campaign or whatever promises you make around hitting your goals, and, you know, a campaign failure, for example, you could look at it as a negative, or you could say, "Okay, this was an experiment, and here's what we learned, and here's what we're gonna do differently."
Yeah.
And you can convince other people
Yeah.
to
That it
think
wasn't a
that
failure.
way.
Yeah. We got data points, it's not a failure.
Yeah. Or don't even say the word failure. Like,
Yeah.
this is something that I tried to work on with my team before I left was we wanted to try some new stuff and foray into new things, and people, especially people en masse, hate change.
Yeah.
And I really needed them to accept that, like, we were gonna be trying stuff and, like, no, it doesn't have to be chaos just because you're trying things. So I use the word experiment.
Yeah.
And that's what you can do too, is you're like, "Okay, I'm going after this goal. Here are the experiments I'm running to hit it." And then when you get on your way through it and on the other side, you can position that however you want. And if you choose to leave failure out, you have learnings,
Yeah.
you have like lessons, you have new tactics, you're way more open-eyed and curious. And I think able to keep going with that thing. Whereas like you see a lot of companies are like, well, I tried this thing for this period and it didn't work, so I don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
I'm like, "That's failure to me." Like, if you're looking at failure as an endpoint, then you're losing all the benefits of a situation that could have otherwise helped you advance much more and faster.
Well, I think that's an interesting thing of when you like, let's say you have a new job and you're coming into a new team and there's people that have been there for a really, really long time and they start to have that like build up a backlog of like, oh, we tried that, it didn't work. We tried that, it didn't work. And they're like such a wet blanket. And you're
Yeah.
coming in and you're like, I have all these ideas and we could try this and this new way. And it's like, we tried that, we tried that. And there's a piece of that where it's like really hard to keep, even if you've been in an organization for a long time, it's hard to like not do that where like we've tried all of those things and they don't work. They're the dead ends, right? Of the cul-de-sac. They're not like this like splintering off point. Um, but I think that's really interesting. And I think the other thing that you were talking about, I think it's, you know, we're now operating at this point where I think you and I both have a healthier relationship with failure. But like that doesn't mean that it doesn't completely rock you, right?
No, not at all. I
Yeah.
still like well, I was going back to an old article I'd written about failure, and one of my headlines is just like, "Failure fucking sucks."
Yeah. Yeah. You also
And
just
it
have to
does, it
process
doesn't
the
mean you're
negative
not
emotions that
gonna
come with it.
Yeah, yeah. Also, hi, Lauren. She's one of my best friends in the whole world, and so I just have to say that. I can't not. I can't not. Um, yeah, so the it feels terrible, but, like, what's worse is feeling like, A, allowing it to be failure, right?
Yeah.
Allowing it to be this, like, "I failed," instead of choosing to look at it differently. Because I guarantee in a lot of those situations where you have tried things and you genuinely think it doesn't work, if you asked a few more questions or you had someone else digging into it a little more, there's probably other things that maybe could have made it work, like, you just didn't give it enough time. Um, so I think, like but then there's the getting used to the discomfort
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
when something doesn't work and you facing up to it.
Yeah.
And if you can I think the only way to get there is that curiosity of like, "Okay, well, what happened and why, and how can I learn more about this?" Then you're able to come back, and again, you're not reporting on a failure at all. You're like, "We tried a thing. It didn't do what we thought it was gonna do. Here's our hypotheses why based on whatever data we have, and here's what we're gonna try next."
But it's like exposure therapy for both you and the team and the company, right? It's like it doesn't happen overnight because it's a complete culture shift of like also talking about it, right? Like, hey, like there's so many organizations that I see where anything that doesn't work is completely swept under the rug. And the only updates that you're getting in team meetings and company meetings are the things that are going well, right? Like nobody's unpacking the big hairy thing that didn't work that's still the problem to be solved. And I
Yeah.
think that's just like that's a tough thing to swing inside of an organization um from like communication and talking about it and emotional vulnerability and all the stuff that gets wrapped up in it. Oh, and I going back, the thing that I think was really helpful at OpenView, we split our goals into two types of goals. Vital goals were things that we had done before that we knew we wanted to continue doing. And so we goaled them on like, you know, we have enough data points to know what metric we can increase. And then we had just change goals and we goaled that on like the activity itself. Like, did we do the thing that would give us enough data points to then understand of whether we should continue doing it or not?
Yep.
And they were completely measured differently, which I think was a really important like mental shift of like this is the thing we're trying to improve because we know we like it and like there's still failure points in there, but it's not like this is a net new experiment that we're trying and we don't even know if this is, you know, the right thing to do, but
Yeah.
like let's not goal it on did it accomplish the end goal that we want to get to. Let's goal it on did we do the set of activities that give us enough data points to understand whether we should continue doing it.
Yeah. And what an important institutional mindset too, which I
Yeah.
think because obviously everything that we say and talk about regarding everything we talk about
Everything
really
about
depends on
everything.
the yeah. It really depends on the organizational
Yeah.
circumstances you're in too. So, like, we can say all we want, but there are, I'm sure, plenty of organizations where if you just don't hit your target, they make it either like you failed
Yeah.
and whatever. So, like, obviously, that is a giant asterisk on this, but
I know.
I love
But you
when
gotta do the
companies
work first too, right? Like, you have to change be the change you wanna see in the world.
I think for me too, like, it's true. The the times when I was just talking to one of my clients about this. He was talking about a change they're making in the company. It's still early, like, the company's not very big, it's less than 20 people. So
Yeah.
making a change is way less painful, and it's an important infrastructure change that will benefit the company long term and would be a huge headache to do later. And the sort of, the way people give up their power when they don't want change by saying like, "Oh, I don't understand this," or "I don't, this is gonna make it so that I am penalized in some way for if I don't do," like, they sort of decide in advance and
That it's
predict
not
the
gonna work.
future.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that to me is more an example of failure than someone who jumps in and gives it a try and, wants to understand it, wants to contribute, because it's amazing how I hear that a lot still from people. Someone reached out to me and wanting to see if I knew of anyone who was looking for work, and they positioned it as like I was fired unfairly from my job, and I'm
Mm,
like, "Okay, like, okay, but, like,
yeah.
I'm that's not gonna make me do anything, right?"
Yeah.
Like, I took action because I looked at their portfolio, I was like, "This is good," but, like, so much of that is a decision mindset
Yeah.
that I don't think is helpful in breaking away from the thing that you're really trying to get away from. And so, like, to me, the failure starts there. If you're
Yeah.
starting from that mindset of like the negative or not wanting to give things a chance, you're going to fail in a way that hurts real bad. And like,
Yeah.
I would call that failure because you're holding yourself back.
Yeah.
And that's, like, the hardest thing to see. I think it's more amongst, like, people, like, well, no, actually, it really doesn't matter where. It's like, failure's not in charge, you are. That doesn't
Ooh,
mean things won't happen to
God, you're
you.
so clippable today.
Clearly, I have a lot of experience with this topic, and
I've never failed at anything personally. I'm just kidding. We were talking before we started the episode on, like, the accidental perfection, like, filter,
Yep,
that
yeah, and it's like, it's never, and you know what? The the more I fail, the happier I am,
Yeah, okay. Well, what's that about?
because you see it's like facing a fear.
Yeah,
Failure is like that thing that shall not be named, but once you name it, it kinda shrinks into this, like, little itty bitty thing, and you're like, "Oh."
yeah,
It's not as simple as, like, you're successful or not, or you did it right or wrong or not. You can follow the rules, you can follow process and the rules, and things can still go sideways.
yeah, yeah,
So, um, for me, I think just the experience, it's like racking up experiences of things not going the way I wanted them to go or thought
mm,
they were gonna go.
yeah,
And I just consistently find that either the universe was trying like hell to stop me before it got to that moment, like the TEDx Somerville thing, um, or it's something that is so deep inside in me that I don't even see it, and it's like a flash. It's like kind of like a smack in the face. It's like, wake up,
yeah. "Wake up, dummy.
live.
This
This
isn't
isn't
for you."
helping you. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's, like, that mantra that I've probably said so much to you over the last year that's really helped me is, like, "If not this, then better," right? And I think that's a big piece of it is, like, this idea that you can ever control anything is the illusion, right? Like, you got no control, right?
It's
And
all made
so,
up.
whether that mantra actually is true and the arc of your life is gonna be, "If not this, then better," or it just makes you feel better in the moment and feel like you have, um hopefulness and something to look forward to. I don't care if it's a placebo effect or not, but I think it's really powerful to reframe it, right? Of like, "Oh, that wasn't for me," right? Like, "Oh, that thing just that wasn't the right thing. And if
Or
not
like,
this, then
it
better."
was for me and I did want it and I'm sad I didn't get it,
Yeah.
but like, what's next? What
Yeah.
else? What can I do with this? What
Yeah,
can I do with
it's
these
like an
feelings?
action on the end of the emotion, which I think can be really helpful.
It's so, I mean, and this applies to your career more than anything. Like to
Yeah.
me, you're failing at your career when you don't start, when you
Yeah.
like complain and don't take any action, right? Or you're like, it's like you have to just jump in the arena
Yeah.
and you're guaranteed something will happen if you get in the arena
It
and
might
you
be
stay in
bad,
it.
but something's gonna happen.
I mean, listen, I got to New York finally in the end of November 2017 after my first attempt at getting an apartment went sideways, and I was completely demoralized. I finally get here, and 2 months later, at the beginning of January, I'm fired from my job at Help Scout, and I'm like, you know what I mean? It's like I'm
Yeah.
getting to know a new city. So it would have been easy, and I'm sure I did at the time feel sorry for myself at some point.
Yeah.
But then I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna start
I got
consulting.
bills to pay.
And you just start saying yes to stuff. And I think that's a really important thing for people in their careers is like, it doesn't matter whether you think you can get it or not, whether you think you deserve it, whether anything.
Yeah.
Just try
Yeah.
and see what happens. Because like, guess what? That's practice for the next time when you really find something you want, you go in less green. And so you're more strategic. So it's like racking up all those things. Like, perfect example. I was trying to get more like, I wanted to sort of increase the awareness of our podcast because
Yeah.
we've been getting tons of, like, organic positive feedback. We started seeing people just, like, subscribing and when we weren't really doing anything at all, and I was like, "Wow, there's some momentum here."
Imagine if we did something.
Yeah, like, imagine if we tried. We were on break. We were on I feel like
Yeah.
Rachel and Ross right now. "We were on a
Right.
break." So I tried something. This was Alex Burkett. This was his thing, the surround sound strategy. I was like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
should just like." There's a lot of marketing podcast roundup posts that are like years old
Yeah.
and don't include some other ones that I really like right now too. So yes, Luke pivot. That's such a good one. So I went out and I emailed a bunch of people and I included 2 other podcasts in the mix.
Yeah.
Um I think it was yours, Romley, actually. Just because I do love it. I think it's a great
Don't
podcast.
worry. Devin's been doing outreach on your behalf to get you
Yeah.
in some podcast roundups. I hope you're
I was
happy.
trying to be strategic. I didn't wanna go in and just be like, "You should add mine." I was like, "Here's 2 other ones that, like, I know are really good."
Yeah.
Nobody responded. Nothing happened. And I was like, "Okay." And I
Yeah.
talked to Alex about it yesterday. I was like, "Okay, so, like, nothing really happened with round 1. Like, here are the different things that I did. I emailed some people, I DM'd some people, I went on Reddit.
Yeah.
Like, what could I do now?" Like, I was more curious than disappointed. I was like, "Well,
Well, that didn't
0
work.
of that worked."
Yeah.
But it's
Well,
like,
I think
what
okay, so
now
that
though? Like, follow it by what now,
yeah.
not, "Oh boy," like
Yeah. That so I feel like the 2 things that I've decided to add in this year into my, like, core focus. The one is Audacity, which again, it's gonna be a great episode. I keep talking about it. It was one of those episodes that we got to the end of recording it, and we were like, "We haven't even scratched the surface yet," which I feel like is always a really interesting topic.
yeah.
But the second one, which is sort of related to Audacity, is like I have a goal this year to open as many doors as possible, like
Mm,
trusting in my own self to be able to close gracefully the ones that are not a good fit. But
yeah.
that like idea of in the back of my head, like the goal this year is opening doors, also provides that like forward momentum energy of exactly what you're talking about, which is like, okay, well, like that didn't work. What next? It's like the same thing. Like, let me open the door. Let me look behind this one. Let me see what's behind door number 3. And maybe it's a new car and maybe it's a flock of chickens. I don't know.
It
I don't want
reminds
either of
me of
those
what
things
you
this
were
year. Maybe
saying.
eventually, but neither of those things I want this year.
Well, it's like, this kind of was my, I was trying to refer back to something you said and I completely forgot already.
That's okay.
But it's fine.
This
My
is what happens
brain.
also in the real non-live recordings is we have just, go down a rabbit hole and then can't get out of it.
What am I gonna do when I can't blame cancer anymore? Like, when this is done, I'm like, "Chemo brain,
You
it's
can say like,
fine."
"Oh, chemo irreparably damaged my
Yeah.
brain."
I'm never gonna be myself again. Thank God.
Then you'll
There are
just be
seasons
a
to
little
every.
older. You'll just be like, "Oh, I'm getting old." You
Yeah.
can
And
always
people
blame
are
it
like,
on
"Wow, you look
something.
so young." And I'm like,
I know you
"Yes,
do.
this works." Um, but I was thinking back to last fall, and I think my mindset was not in a good place when, um, I was at Inbound
Yeah.
giving a talk with Ashley and Marketing Profs and we were launching season 3 of the podcast, and I had taken a break prior of my own business to kind of take a break because I didn't have one, and I had these expectations. I was like, I'd lined up all this stuff in the summer to try to bring to fruition some stuff in the fall, and it didn't happen, and even the things like speaking at events, like,
Yeah.
didn't do a lot for me business-wise, and I remember feeling really negative about it. I was like, "What was the point in doing all this? It was so much work," and besides the fact that I just loved doing it with Ashley, like, she's such a good partner in that way, I took joy in that, but I was like, "I have a business to run," and I think I
Turns
just
out taking a break from business is not the thing to do to build your business.
but what happened was I end once I was able to get past that,
Yeah.
also, I think that was also the beginning of cancer behind
I
the
was gonna
scenes.
say, and then you got a cancer. You were like, "Oh, I'm ready to start leaning back into the business," and then I was like, "Cancer
Yeah, it
diagnosis."
was like Jul I think it was mid-July, mid to end July and so probably wasn't factoring that in either, but that's a perfect example of mind over matter. It's like I let myself be disappointed, I let myself be frustrated instead of saying like, "Oh, is there something more I could be doing here?
Yeah.
Like, do I need to be more direct? Do I need to make more, set up meetings?" Maybe just organically being here isn't enough. I have to put a new type of, focus or plan in place. And what was really interesting is once I had to stop working altogether, um, I applied the mindset that I think would have worked for me in the fall, which was just accepting the things I can't change and focusing on the things I can. And so even just yesterday at the doctor, he was like, "You're you're really positive and like very bright." And I
Yeah.
said, "It's the only thing I have control over is my
Mm.
mindset." I
Yeah.
said, "Mind over matter is all I have." And that's what led me more gracefully through cancer was like, this could have been worse,
Mhm.
but I chose the mindset that actually lifted me through, got me to learning a bunch of stuff, completely reframing my life, and also reframing the events of last fall
Yeah.
such that I am now like inspired to be soft launching back in the world, and I'm excited to work on my business again.
And
Whereas
that
last
energy is completely different from, "Oh, I have to," or, "Oh,
Mhm.
I'm not doing enough," or whatever it is, versus, like, when you can tap into that and get inspired again.
And this is
Um,
why it's so important at work too, because work is always gonna throw complicating, challenging,
oh, you're not
hard
over, like,
circumstances.
anything at
Yeah,
work.
and it's if you can get to a place of mind over matter, you can get to a strategic point that might even help you out of some of these situations or make them less shitty,
Yeah.
but your mind has to be in the right place first.
Well, I think so at work too, um, I know everyone's you are amazing, Devin.
No,
Um,
I'm not gonna put that don't worry. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Lindsay. I humbly accept it.
so I think at work, specifically in the marketing function, the most challenging thing is you are not in control necessarily of what the business needs or what your audience needs. You're just like a conduit to try to understand both of those and then create a program at the intersection, right? So you're not only getting it from my audience and my target ICP is constantly changing. My buyer is changing how they're buying, how they're thinking about it. There's other options on the market, how those ones are stacking up to my product, but also your business is changing, right? How much they're going to allocate towards marketing, what the goals are, whether, we need to hit this revenue number versus this one. Like that's always in flux. This is always in flux. And you're sitting at the intersection being like, I'm going to try to build something when both of these things are rapidly changing all of the time and it's going to go great, right? But I think once you give up the idea of control over either of those two things, neither side rocks you that much anymore. And you can focus on like what's remaining, what's constant, what can I build today, and keep that momentum forward. Because otherwise, I've seen it happen so many times where people are rocked by mostly the business side stuff, but like even just change in audience behaviors, change in buyer behaviors, like that stuff can be rocking you too of like, hey, this program used to work, this channel used to work, and it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
No, it's just
Yeah.
what are we doing next? And the other thing when you were talking, I was I have a friend who I met recently, like over the summer, but has been going through challenging time through their life, like the last couple years. And the constant refrain that we send back and forth to each other is gentle, gentle. Like, just be gentle with yourself. Gentle, gentle. Like, whenever there's some, like, going through it, it's just like gentle, gentle. And I love that as like a common refrain to just remind yourself. And it sounds like you let yourself, like, the moment that you could soften into yourself and release control was the moment that you actually found your inspiration again.
Yeah, and release judgment.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing was, like, I was judging the situation, I was making decisions about what it all meant about
Yeah.
our culture and work and fairness, and it's like,
Yeah.
like,
Gentle,
sure,
gentle.
that might also be true, but, like, and I think where you like, the to what you're talking about with, like, both sides rocking, like, kind of you're right. In most positions in marketing, you don't have a lot of control over
Yeah.
what's happening, and that's really hard. It's one of the most challenging parts of the job. But doing what you said, there's a third option it provides you, which is to take a step back and say, "Is this working for me anymore?"
Yeah.
Because you may look at these things, kind of changing and wavering, and you may realize like, "Oh,"
Maybe I don't wanna be in B2B tech anymore.
or like maybe I don't wanna be in these circumstances don't serve my
Yeah.
career goals. Like, you try a bunch of times and you're like, "I've tried to work within this situation multiple times in different ways.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing is it's it doesn't serve my career anymore. Thus, it's untenable for me. It's not,
Yeah.
and then you change your mind out of your own it's about you, not them. So it reduces some of that like frustration and anger when you're like, that person's crazy and it's their fault. It's like, okay, you can't change that though. You
Yeah.
can't change the dynamics because you tried a lot of times and nothing's gonna work, and you don't have the power in your position to do so.
Oh,
So
that's
if you
happened to me in my career several times, and that's why I think to the point of, like, I would always joke that, like, my picker is good, but my lever is better in terms of my career, but I think it comes to that where I got to the point where I would try, like, 3 or 4 times and then be like, "Oh, I'm the one that's gotta change. I gotta remove myself because like, that's the only thing I have control over. I don't have control over, like, you know, either of like any of the circumstances." And I tried, right? I tried to see if I could have control. I tried to see if I could have influence. And when you like when you get to the point, you can either be demoralized or you can find the fact that no, there's one other option, right? Like you have to
Yeah,
change.
and also, like, just, like, as a leader, I'm like, I would've been fine if people who were unhappy just quit and didn't like, if they weren't so d intent on, like, proving that I'm incompetent or a monster, it's like, "You know what? If they had just been like, 'You know what? This isn't for me. Bye.'"
Yeah.
I would have been happier too, right? It's like it doesn't do anyone any good, and I realized, like, I've been that person. Help Scout was a great example where the situation wasn't good for me anymore. My goals were changing constantly. Once, Sunit left, who's our CMO, it was not things were not steady, and it started to look like I wasn't performing.
Yeah.
And I was like, "I know this isn't completely my fault." But I stayed and kept trying to make it work, which made me more resentful, which made me act out more. And at
Yeah.
the end of the day, I look back at it, I'm like, "Yeah, I should have been fired."
Oh my
Like,
god. I coach on that a lot because there's, like, very empathetic leaders, and usually when I start out with an organization and I'm talking to a head of marketing and they're talking about the people on their team, because there's organizations that have had a lot of chaos over the last year or 2, there will be people on the team who are completely burnt out, and to your point of where you were at, like, you couldn't have come back from that. There's probably nothing that they could have done to get you back feeling productive, aligned, good, not acting out, right? And I'm like, it doesn't matter. I know a lot of leaders will keep folks on the team because they used to be performing really well, they used to be helpful, they used to have, a lot of passion and energy, and they know the fact that it was the organization that sucked the life out of them through all the changes and chaos and whatnot. And the answer is still that you have to let that person go, because if you don't think you can bring them back,
yeah.
then you have to let them go because it's going to be, to your point, you were probably a culture suck there at the end. Like, you
Oh,
were
yeah.
probably, you know, an absolute beast. No offense. I'm sure you were. No, you're probably a beast.
I think that's a little extreme, but okay.
You were a cancer on the organization. No, just kidding.
Great joke, Margaret. Really good joke.
Oh, I'm sorry,
No, I
Devin.
mean, it's I've been around those people too, and I think Shannon, that's such a good point, is like,
Yeah,
if you are brave enough to look at something and say, you know, "This isn't working for me anymore,"
yeah,
and just make it about yourself, now you have a little cocoon where you're able to be, like, the most self-centered. You're like, "What do I want? What do I need?" And it blocks out, it doesn't leave any space for the mistakes other people are making.
yeah.
Because in a lot of cases, um sorry, I had to put this up because it makes I love it. Um, but if you, like, you know and I know what I was doing back then. I was deciding I didn't have any options.
Yeah,
I was deciding that, I had to stay until I figure, and blah, and I just moved. And so, I can't, I probably made a bunch of self-limiting decisions and made it feel like I victimized myself to myself.
yeah,
And that only empowers that behavior, the bad behavior, even more. And the thing is, it doesn't matter, like, I still showed up for my team, obviously, because they're experiencing it too. But what matters most is how you feel and you taking responsibility for yourself and
mm,
your own well-being enough to get out of a situation when it doesn't work.
yeah.
If you have the option, and huge caveat, because not everybody does. So, like,
Well, and I think that Help Scout thing, like, you did have a new rent payment, right? Like, there were certain things that I think, I mean, now looking back at, like, a older and wiser person, you could probably have made a better decision, but you made exactly the right decision in that moment, which was like, "Let me hold on to this job because I have a new apartment that I need to pay for," right?
sure, but it's also the stories I told myself to go along with it weren't helpful. And
Yeah.
so to make that decision, you need to also include in it why you're doing it so you can
Mm,
remind yourself on hard days,
yeah,
you know? And I think that's the big difference of, like, being sort of catapulted into freelance work then, and choosing no answer at all, and just saying, "All I know is what I'm doing is bad for me now, and
yeah,
it's about to get worse, and I am not prepared to make the sacrifices to my own reputation to make this work."
yeah.
And it was
Ooh,
clean, it was easy. Obviously, there's time of processing that loss for what, but,
yeah,
it didn't have to be a big to do. And you're right, I had no safety net, you know? It's yeah, I had nothing, and it was
yeah.
like, fine. I was like, "This is fine." And I felt really good about it, and I felt hopeful, and that was why I just was, like, catapulted into work for several months after.
Yeah,
Um, and I think, yeah, I feel like I feel really strongly after years of making mistakes and making a complete and total fool of myself, both in public and behind the scenes, everywhere. I feel differently about failure, and that is why I said at the beginning, I don't think it exists,
yeah,
because it's it's something you have more control over than you realize, and there are so many opportunities in it that I've seen that involve sometimes just giving up.
yeah,
And I've gained more by, like, giving in and giving up, including this latest bout with cancer, which I talked about on LinkedIn recently. It's like, once I realized I couldn't do it myself and was brave enough to, like, really ask for help,
yeah.
that's when my life completely transformed from the inside out.
Ugh, I just wanna, like, sit in that. That's I mean, that's everything, right? I think that the softness of letting people help you,
Yeah,
you know?
and letting go. All
Yeah,
that time feeling like, I have to do this, I have to do that, and if I don't do this, then people, it's like once you let that go, I won't. it's freed up even my creativity because now I'm not so worried. Like, I have exposed myself very vulnerably in front of literally everyone. And, like, and I threw all my worries about, like, is anyone gonna hire me again? Because I was sick once. Like,
Yeah.
that was a belief I had. And turns out the opposite is true. People see you as 10 times stronger. And it turns out when you're nice to people in your career, like, those people really appreciate it and want to help. And they sent you the nicest notes. And the same is true for you don't have to have cancer to make that happen. You know what I mean? And you can get that help without quote unquote deserving it. Like, maybe
Mm,
you can't compare, maybe you're like, I don't know anyone, or I've never, like, whatever. Just ask anyway, right? It's
yeah,
like the no isn't the failure, it's the not starting, it's the not risking that makes you fail because you're just staying where you are, right? You're
yeah,
keeping yourself in a point of stasis, which you're probably not happy about.
yeah,
And so it's like, I almost wanna give it a different name. It's like, thank God something didn't work today.
yeah,
Thank God I was embarrassed. Thank God, because it's just you're so much more invincible in a way.
yeah.
Because 'Cause you're like, "Well, I've been embarrassed publicly a lot in front of some really important people, so, like, I think it's fine."
Oh, I've got we probably don't have time for me to jump into story. I've had so many stories of like absolutely just bungling people's names. The first time I met Blake, a partner at OpenView, I was at AppQs and me and Ty went to go meet with him to talk about product led growth because we were going to start writing content about it.
Yeah.
And right before we got into the restaurant, Ty had said something to me and had a different name. He was like talking about this guy, Josh, or something like that. And I turn around and I see Blake and I was like, Josh. And he looked so confused. Like, I have so, for some reason with names, and this is just a complete side note, I have so many
Same.
stories like that where I'm like, I've just like bungled people's names before. I once photographed an entire engagement session and called the fiance the wrong name the entire time. Didn't realize it until afterwards. Like, they didn't
Whoa.
correct me. I'm just like literally calling this guy totally wrong name the whole
Oh my
session.
god. That's a good one. I did this with, that I, like, love I learned a lot of this whole marketing podcast was, like, just it taught me, like, there was so much it taught me. I love Robert Rose and Joe Pulizzi, like, I just their podcast was just perfect for me. I loved it. I listened to it religiously,
Yeah.
um, and have, like, since come back to it again, and I had seen so 2 years ago, I was at Marketing Profs and saw Robert Rose and, like, ran up to him and was like, "I just need to tell you without wanting anything from you that I just, like, thank you for," and I'm, like, total
Just big
fangirl.
fan.
Yeah. And then this past year at Marketing Profs, I was sitting at a table with Joe Pulizzi, and I, like, had to tell him the same thing. So I was like, "When people make an impact on you, like, I feel like it's important to say it and
Oh, and it's
abruptly walk
so
away."
meaningful to hear that, you know?
Yeah. And so I'm talking to Joe, and I'm saying something, and I need to, like, Robert's name is coming next in whatever it is I'm saying, and I, like, blanked on his name, and I, like, know his name, and he looked at me, and I was like he's like, "Do you listen to the podcast?" I was like, "Wait," like, and it was like, I know this man's name, like, I was like, "Oh, you guys talk about the Bears and the whatever, like, you have your,"
Yeah. Yeah,
he's like,
you're,
"Oh,
like,
you,"
calling specific episodes, and you're like, "I
yeah,
swear to God, I listen, I
he's like, "Oh,
listen."
you do listen." I'm like, "Yes, I just, like, don't have a brain," it's like,
I
I
think, like, how
can't.
my brain is stacked, it's like anxiety and then names live above it, so if
Yeah.
my anxiety is activated, the names just fly out of my brain. Like, somebody could walk up to me and be like, "Quick, what's your best friend's name?" And, like, point to my best friend, and I'd be like, "Ah, ah," like, I just they just, like, fly out. That's the first thing that goes if I have, like, a spike of cortisol, all the
Yes.
names are out of my head.
Sometimes it happens in, like, dumb ways, like, you have to repeat your name, like, 1,000 times a day at a hospital,
Yeah.
and or they ask you so many questions. One time they asked me, like, a really easy question, and I was like, "How are you doing?" Or, like, "What's your temperature? Or how tall are you?" Or
You're
something, and
like,
I was like,
"Devin."
yeah, exactly. I was like, and it took me a while. I was like, "I don't know why that was so." Oh, no, I know what it was. I was paying for a prescription, and she was like, "Card or cash?" And I was, like, holding the card in my hand. I was like,
Yeah.
"Um, and she looked at me, and I was like, "I don't know why this is hard.
Yeah.
Let me just tap that right there."
Let's just not use words and just do actions.
Eh? Eh?
Oh
Eh?
my god. Yeah, everyday failures. Everyday failures. But you know what? We don't let it let us down, and I am sorry if anyone I've ever called the wrong name. I'm just sorry. I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
love you still.
I'm sorry and I love you is everything. That's story of my life. That's my tagline. I'm like, "I'm sorry for who I am as a person, and I love you. There's nothing to be done here."
Don't release it.
Okay,
Give up control. I know
so
we're coming to the top of the hour here. We were talking about before we hopped on that we were going to end a couple minutes early in case people have calls right after this that they want to jump to.
or
Um,
questions.
yeah.
If you don't have a question now and you wanna send it in later,
Oh
we
yeah.
can do that
Yeah,
somehow.
we can do a wrap up one.
That's my copay
All the
today. Oh my
money
gosh,
in
I
your
love
bank
you,
account,
Doug.
Doug. Send it over.
Yeah. Maybe it's like, write a review.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Everybody write a review.
that's your yeah, your copay is write a review on our podcast. Leave us a rating and review.
Yeah, that would be great. It does really help,
Yeah.
especially along the way.
Or post about us
And
on LinkedIn. Tell
and check
everyone that
out
you
our
love us.
new, our new second newsletter is gonna come out, starting I'm gonna be sending one on Thursday, but this one's just like, um so there's so many funny things I, like, can't even I'm trying to, like, do logistics, and I can't because you guys are making me laugh. Um, so, we are launching a new, wait,
Oh,
where
yeah,
do we
Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen to podcasts would be great to have a
yeah.
rating.
Don't do Google, though, because Google Podcast is going away, so probably
No, I said
Spotify.
Apple, didn't I? Did I say Google?
You did, I was just adding in, don't
Oh,
do Google because 'cause they're, like, going away. Google Podcast is going away. So I can tell you where not to. I think
perfect.
Apple's
That's very
where
helpful.
yeah. But anyway,
Don't
we're
give us a rating on Google Podcast, but
I'm trying so hard to just say logistics, and I can't. Like, this shouldn't be my job. I'm not good at it.
You are,
Um,
though. We successfully did this. No technical challenges that we know of. We'll see
yeah,
if this actually recorded and then we can turn this into an episode. That would
and
be a
I'd love to know if anyone wants us to do this more.
Oh, yeah.
Like, do you care? Like, was this a unique experience? And it's fine if you're like, "I don't care." Like, that's I'd love to hear that too, but, like, we were
But don't say
trying this
that in a
out
public forum. Say that just to our inboxes.
yeah, actually, I don't care where you say it, honestly, but for Margaret's sake, say it
For my
somewhere.
sake, please don't say it in a public forum.
Yeah.
I
Oh my
can't
god.
handle that.
We have a yes and a
Yeah,
yes.
during lunch break, awesome.
Hundo P, love that, I love that.
Yeah, maybe we start to do some lunch maybe Devin we can bring back Devin eating on the podcast for lunch breaks.
Oh, do you know I thought of that this morning?
Did you?
I was like, yeah, um, I'm just posting all the people who are saying yes. No one said no yet, so I'm not censoring, okay? Free speech, everybody.
Yeah.
Dangerous thing to say these days. So yeah, so what were we saying? So okay, we'll think about doing this more. This was fun. We just wanted to try it. Like it was just
Yeah.
a random like let's just try doing this and I kind of like being live especially when people come in and participate, which you guys were great about. So
Yeah.
and then yeah, please rate and review us. Like would I just copy and paste if you ever said anything nice about us before, just copy and paste it there so you don't have to.
Yeah,
And
or if
then
you see somebody else in that said a rating that you like, just copy and paste their rating.
yeah, just
Steal other people's
fine.
work too. Plagiarize.
Listen, I got pretty good at bending the rules of my life, so and making it fine. I'm like, technically, this is fine.
Yeah, it's not a failure if
Um,
you don't get caught.
exactly. Or if you find a way to explain it such that it sounds like it's not.
Yeah.
Um, wait, hold on.
Luke said, "Everyone calendar this as professional development so people won't hassle you on Slack."
Ah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Webinar. We'll just call them all webinars.
Yeah, it's a
Webinar.
webinar. It's a very work-focused webinar.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming to this. We'd love to hear your thoughts if you have any on this that we could tackle in a later episode too. Like if there
Yeah.
was anything.
Oh, topic ideas, send them over. Every once in a while,
Mhm.
we get little pockets of inspiration, but sometimes Devin and I are like, "I don't know. What do you wanna talk about?"
Yeah. And we love calling audibles like we did with the Audacity one.
Yeah, we just threw that one in there.
Yeah.
You're gonna
So
like that episode. We're not trying to overhype it.
I think we already did, but
We might have overhyped it a little bit.
Margaret's really into it. She's like, yes.
I wanna overhear somebody this year saying to somebody else, "Where does she get the audacity?" That's my
About
goal. My
you.
unofficial, yeah, about me. I wanna overhear it, like, in a room or something. Somebody being like, "Where does she get the audacity?" That's what I
Yeah.
want this year.
You're welcome, Doug. Thanks for brightening my life.
Aw.
Doug was like an accidental mentor. We met at MyTex in Boston, and he helped
I
me
like
learn how to do
accidental mentor, like
well, just because, like, I wasn't setting out to get to have one, but, like,
yeah, yeah,
we
gotcha.
met and he, like
I think
I feel
that's
like
how
he took it upon himself to, like, make sure I was okay and a lot like, he'd check in with me,
yeah,
and he's offered me advice in all areas now, including cancer, and was a big
yeah.
champion for me, so, thank you, Doug, for that.
Ugh, so much good feels on
So
this
many. I
pod.
think it's getting a little like, I think I'm getting a little overkill. Like, I was thanking my mom for something this morning, and she's like, "I get it. I'll see you
She's like,
later."
"This isn't the Devin I know. You can't change your personality at this stage in your life. You must be the same old Devin."
"You betrayed me. Stop taking up my time." This is definitely a point where it's totally fine to tune out. Like, this is
Yeah, I know, I know. Let's wrap this up. Let's wrap this up.
Thanks,
Give people
everybody.
5 minutes back before their next call so they can go for a bio break, grab a little seltzer water, whatever you wanna do.
You're so bossy.
I am
Let
very
them do whatever
bossy.
they wanna do.
Audacity.
Audacity. All right, bye, everybody. This will be up on our feed too at some point. I don't know when, but probably this week. Hopefully
Yep.
today. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.